Welcome to Boss Academy Radio. I'm your host, Paul Kirch, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to this show, BOSS stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies. This show was a live radio show out of Dallas that I hosted for about 8 months to 9 months before I moved it to a podcast. And when I did that, I said, you know what? I've been in the marketing research industry since 1990. I want to do some things to impact the research industry. This show has really started to cater to the business owner, the entrepreneur, the small business owner out there. And I thought, let's do a monthly series with the research industry, get somebody on that's an expert that has some good skills, some strong opinions, and let's see if we can make an impact on the research industry as well. Now, my company, Active Sales Intelligence, is the sponsor of this show. So if you want to learn to sell smarter, go out to activesales.com. Also, Market Research Events, which is marketresearch.events, which is where you probably got the invite for this interview, is also co-sponsoring this show. So we really appreciate Eric Bell and all the support over there. Now, our guest today is somebody that I've had the privilege of working with 2 times in my career. And I probably wouldn't be here doing these interviews right now if it wasn't for him. I actually was a sales rep and got recruited by Merrill when he was at Harris Interactive, and had the opportunity to just learn so much about the sales practice and the science of sales. I became a sponge, and it really transformed my career. It allowed me to do a lot of things that I would not have been able to otherwise. I spent 10 years in operations before getting to that point. So when that happened, I was able to take those skills along with what Merrill taught me, and that's where I am today. And I've been able to make a big impact with a lot of the people I've worked with in the research industry, but I'm also grateful for all the people that I've gotten exposed to, including Merrill. So we're going to talk today a little bit about the future of our industry. Are there some things that are troublesome and concerning? Absolutely. We're going to talk about that. Merrill is the CEO and president of Mark Research, which if you're not familiar with Mark, you can check them out at markresearch.com. And they are an Omnicom company. So, they're a company that faces some challenges because Merrill's company is, a decent sized research firm as part of this huge conglomerate. So he faces some challenges that a lot of people out there don't. And it's given him a perspective because he's seen business from multiple angles. So Merrill, I really want to welcome you to the show.
Thanks, Paul. It's a pleasure to being here. And you're really kind with the comments that you made about me, but it was a pleasure working with you, not once, but twice. And who knows, maybe there'll be a third time down the road.
Yeah, I'd be grateful for that. So we really appreciate you coming on because, when I got into this industry, I was exposed to it as a telephone interviewer at Gallup. And I know you went down a similar path. And when I got involved in the industry organizations, volunteerism was a huge opportunity. That's all but disappeared in a lot of capacities. I mean, the MRA and other organizations really don't have the volunteer pool like they used to. What do you see happening in our industry that gives you the biggest concern about our future?
Paul, I think that's a good place to start. I presented at a conference with Lenny Murphy at IIEX in April down in Atlanta. And one of the things that I had talked a little bit about, the fact that I'm gray, as you can tell. It's not for a fact. I'm old. I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I started as an interviewer. I actually did door-to-door interviewing way back in the day. And come to find out that during the presentation, I had actually looked out in the audience of, 400 or 500 people. And I said, well, how many people are under, 35 millennials in the audience? There was less people in the audience than 30. In fact, more people had done door-to-door interviewing than were millennials in the audience. And that's a problem. I mean, when you go to all the conferences, I was just at TMRE and I was at QASR beforehand, you're not seeing a lot of millennials. You're not seeing a lot of people under 35 in the organization. And I'm really concerned because if you think about how you and I got started, we got started as an interviewer, whether it was a phone interviewer, mall intercepts, door-to-door, it didn't really matter. Or a lot of people started as coding. How are they getting into this industry right now with a lot of those positions going away? And we're just not attracting the millennials that we need to, and the next generation of researchers. And I think it's a problem. And I think some of the strategies that we need to adopt is we have a lot of tracks when we go to conferences, whether it's an entrepreneurial track or whether it's a researcher track, or with the MRA, they have client tracks. I think we need a millennial track. And I think that track needs to be out there. It needs to be front and center. And I also think they should be attracting those types of people at a discounted rate. Invest in the future. And it's not just, MRA or QASR or TMRE or IIEX or SMR or MRIA. It's every single organization. It's every single organization that puts on terrific conferences. We need to attract the younger generation of researchers, or if not, when us gray hairs go away, what's going to be left? So that's a huge concern of mine, Paul.
Yeah, I would agree. I was just blessed to be able to speak down at Baylor University. Art Flanagan at QASR had asked me to go down there and speak with some other people on a panel, and it was a really interesting opportunity because it was a marketing program, but they had market research tracks, and a lot of these kids are just so passionate, excited about this industry. So I was really encouraged, and I think you've been exposed to some of the universities, and from some of the boards you're on, that there are programs out there that are refueling kind of the interest in this industry, but it's very one-dimensional from what I see. It's a focus, well, I shouldn't say one-dimensional, but it's a focus on the researcher practice and the analytical side, less the business side, because that's the thing about this industry. It's an industry. We don't just have one area of business. I mean, you can be a CEO, you can be a project manager, you can be a million things. And I think that that's the missing element, that all these programs seem to be really focusing upon the idea of teaching these people to be researchers, which you and I are not researchers, but we work in the research industry.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And first of all, kudos to you for presenting on a panel down at Baylor. I think that's great. And I think any opportunity any of us get to sort of talk to younger people about the profession, how much we love it, and to try to entice them or build a case as to why that they should look towards the market research industry, I think is great. But think about it this way, Paul. If you think about all of the research programs that are out there, you've got University of Georgia, phenomenal. You've got Michigan State that just came on the scene about 3 years ago. You've got the AC Nielsen Center at Wisconsin. You got SIU. You've got UTA. I probably have just said most of the programs, and most of those, at one time in my career, I was on all of those boards. And the reality is, but together, I don't think that they generate 150 people graduating year after year. And it's a supply and demand. And I think the demand for the younger generation researchers, the storytellers, the people that understand technology, we're just not attracting them, and we're not graduating enough people year after year. And it's a huge problem. And I think it's an industry problem that we all need to sort of recognize, hold hands, sing kumbaya, and let's think about how we can really attack this problem. And we're not really doing a good job of it. I think all of us are failing at that right now. Sure.
One of the questions that came in is, so these are great issues, but how do you see us getting more people actually exposed? So what's some of the solutions you have in mind?
I think it's a great question. And I think it's holding our feet to the fire, meaning I was at QRCA, the Qualitative Research Consultants Association, which is a phenomenal organization that's been around for a long time. I was the keynote presenter a little less than 2 years ago. And again, I looked out in the audience and there was 15 people under 40 at that point. And Steve Schlesinger partnered with our company, Mark Research, and we started something called YPG, which is a Young Professionals Grant, where we actually let 20 people go to the next QRCA conference for free. And their fee was complimentary. We made a big deal out of it. We had 125 people who filled out an application. There was 20 people that were chosen. I think it's a start. And I think that we have to, if it was up to me and I was the Graham Poobah of research in the world, I would say that millennials should be there should be one millennial, there should be one younger, upstarting research professional on every single board out there, whether it's MRA, whether it's SMR, whether it's QRCA, whether it's QASR. There should be somebody who's representing that constituency who can make a difference. The other thing is, I think that we all should have a discounted plan for for millennials. I mean, the reality is the Quirks event in Brooklyn, I think most clients can go for free to that event. If I'm mistaken, I apologize. But I believe that a lot of these conferences, clients can go to the conferences complimentary. I think that's great. That's a start, and that's a great start to get clients there. But I think we need to embody strategies around millennials to attract them, whether it's doing what you did at Baylor and making sure that we cover as many universities as possible to make sure that everybody is aware of the market research industry, this great industry that you and I have been collectively, Paul, probably over 55 years in. So I don't think it's one thing. There's no magic bullet. There's no one strategy that's going to take care of it all. But I think whoever asked that question, I think it's an important question, and we all need to get together and develop marketing campaigns to aggressively go after that. And we don't do that right now. We don't, unfortunately.
We got a comment in. Somebody said the problem is not attracting millennials, but market demand for custom research is declining. Corporate research functions are declining. Yep. They said if they were starting out today, they would not have selected this profession. That's interesting. That's an inside perspective. What do you think about that?
You know, they're right. I'm not sure. Paul, if you and I were, wouldn't it be fun, Paul, to be 19 years old again and you know, being freshmen or sophomores in college? Wouldn't that be great? Imagine I wouldn't be wearing, when I went to college, I was wearing Jordache jeans and Latigra shirts and Capizios and a thin red tie. I thought I was really, really something special. Not really. But, you know, I'm not so sure if we had to do it all over again and we were coming out right now, would we go into this profession? I don't know. I'm thinking that whoever made that comment is probably true. And we probably would, you know, take a second look at it. I think with that said, I still believe wholeheartedly that it's a great profession to get into. I think it's a profession for me because I have, you know, ADD, like most people our age. And I like the fact that it's changing. I like the fact that I'm working on CPG and retail business in the morning and then hospitality and transportation in the afternoon and then finish up with a little technology early evening. You know, I like the fact that it's changing so rapidly. You know, I like the fact that I'm ahead of the market and we find out what's coming out. I like the fact that you've got to use in our industry right now, you know, you got to understand marketing and marketing research. When we were growing up, they were really different. Now those lines are no longer blurred, they're together. So you've got to understand marketing, you've got to understand strategies. I think there's a place for younger professionals to come into this industry and make a difference, who are good communicators, who are good storytellers, who understand and are socially marketing folks. I think there's a huge opportunity for that because there's not a lot of those people running around in the industry. And I think we have a need for them.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. I mean, we can come back to that at the end when we have some Q&A, but let's think about the fragmentation that's happening in our industry. And it's happening at the organizational level. It seems to be happening at the corporate level. How do you see that kind of really impacting the stability and really the future of defining a clear path?
Yeah. So are you talking about fragmentation with the research organizations?
Yeah, let's start there. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I think somebody had counted when I was at QASR, and they said that there was 27 or 28 market research organizations. That's probably what, Paul, 15, 17 too many? You know, you've got companies like mine, like yours, who are trying to pick and choose which ones they want to be members of, support, financially support, maybe even get on the board. And I think there's too many. I think research organization fragmentation in our industry is horrible, and I think research organization consolidation is what we need. I applaud MRA and QASR for coming together. We all saw some press releases probably within the past 30 days. I think Diane Bowers and David Almy should be, you know, applauded for going after this. It's probably something that should have happened years ago. And, you know, I know it's going to be a slow battle to incorporate both of those associations. Their dues structure, their board structure, everything is a little bit different. But I think more and more we need to do that because we can't, every company out there can't support all of these associations. There's just too many. And I think if we came together, we should be able to make decisions at the highest level in terms of I mean, to me, there should be WRC, a World Research Council. There should be a grand poobah that all of these associations look up to, and set some standards that everybody in the world can live up to. So that's some of the stuff that I would do in a second.
So QASR MRA, you see that as a positive, as do I, although I still have some questions as to, I mean, because the typical audience at a QASR event is a little different than the typical MRA. So there's some disconnect there in terms of membership, but maybe this allows them to have a lot of power from a lobbying perspective, but also maybe attract a new audience and maybe even focus on some of those younger people.
I totally agree with you. I think part of the good news, Paul, is the fact that they are attracting a lot of different people. You can have different tracks. I think if you got a couple of those board members who are extremely smart, David and Diane and a few others in a room, I think you could knock off probably in a span of 3 or 4 days, you can probably get 90% of the way there. And I think they should not stop there. I like what they're doing, but I would include 3 or 4 other organizations to do it all at the same time. Why do it again and again and again? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it's a slow process. I think when I talked to David, he said it was, probably 3 years of, just really work on trying to get everything in the right direction. And aligning the boards is going to be tough because I think the MRA board members have taken a more active role in actually defining the organization than they used to. But all those things, I think, ultimately end up moving us in a better direction. But what about all these other organizations out there? What can we do to help as members and as people that support them, help really get the industry moving in the right direction through them?
That's a great question. I think one of the problems with the industry is it's a slow adopting industry, Paul. You know that. It takes us forever for something to take root. I remember Gordon Black way back in the day pounding on the table and saying phone is dead, the web is going to take over, and that was in 1995. And frankly, there's still a fair amount of phone business that's out there, although it's clearly going lower and lower. I think the industry is chasing, is chasing its tail a little bit. Hang on for a second. So I don't know if you can see this, but this is my daughter plays soccer. So I believe the market research industry is the same as my 9-year-old soccer game. So Paul, when she's playing, and she'll be playing this weekend, when the ball goes to the right, every team member goes to the right, right? So when the ball goes to the left, every entire team goes to the left. Well, that's the market research industry right now, which is really unfortunate. So when somebody says biometrics, everybody goes. They say mobile, everybody goes. They say eye tracking, go. Big data, go. When they talk about sentiment analysis, the same thing. When they talk about on the future, it'll be wearables. It'll be drone research. I just came up with a new research project. Drones are going to drop surveys, and we're going to pick them up 10 minutes later, and that's a new product, or wearables. So the problem is everybody's chasing that. So it doesn't matter if you have the right staff, the right clients. It's just that everybody's looking at the new shiny toy, and they're trying to aggressively go after that and build a business. I think that's the wrong strategy. And I think the industry is fragmented a lot because of that. And I think that, in my opinion, there's too many companies out there right now that are generalists. And I'm not saying, I don't want anybody to come off of this session and say, okay, what Merrill's saying is don't go after any technology. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is go after the right technology for your business, for your enterprise, that has the right staff, that you have the right clients, and by the way, that you can make money at, because that's what we're doing. And I think there's too many companies out there that are chasing that new shiny toy, and they're not getting as far as they would like, and they're not being as profitable as they could be, and they're not delivering this product to clients that's impressive. I mean, if you remember 3 years ago, the big thing was sentiment analysis, and you could get 100,000 responses quickly on a particular product or a particular service. And then it was like, finally years later, it's like, okay, well, that's great, but what am I going to do with the data? What's the story that it's telling me? What's the takeaway? How do I move my business forward? And I think that's the part that a lot are missing right now.
In 2009, I started my company. In 2010, I went to the first MRI CEO event I attended.
Yep.
And I think it was down in Florida. And I'm sitting there at these round tables, and this one gentleman was sitting in a room of everyone complaining about 2009 being their horrible year, and the industry had stalled out, and the economy's down. And he kind of didn't say much, but he leaned over to me and he goes, 2009 was the best year I had. And I asked him afterwards why, and he said, for one reason and one reason only: we held true to our specialization. He goes, everyone else was going after any business they could. Right. Everyone else was focusing on being a generalist, and we focused on our specialization in healthcare. And I thought, man, that's a really interesting perspective. And even one of the comments that's in the sidebar, somebody said, they go, I think the trend towards less custom research and more big data analytics in my company, we're also going towards a generalist model versus a specialist model. So I think it's happening a lot in our industry, and it's concerning to me because I think one of the biggest problems I see, and you have the advantage of working with a very large organization in Omnicom. I suppose in some ways it's also a disadvantage, but you look at things, and your company does, from a business perspective as much as anything related to research, and maybe sometimes even more. I think most small, mid-sized companies in our industry focus on being the research specialists, and they don't focus on building a business. I mean, I may be offending some people there. I may be making a broad general statement, but I think it's true. Do you have any thoughts on that and what that means?
Yeah, I think you said it earlier, maybe 10 minutes ago, when you said that you and I weren't researchers. We're not. We're business entrepreneurs. We are business executives. We know how to move a business forward. And ... that means to me, for me, make it scalable and make it profitable. So my feet are held to the fire based from Omnicom with certain revenue goals, with certain profit goals. And there's no excuses. I've been doing this for over 11 years. That's a long time to be in a situation where you're held accountable for results. And the biggest challenge of my day, my week, my month, my year is this. It's somewhat easy to see where the industry is going, and that's the easy part. But moving the Titanic, to do that while you're hitting short-term goals and having a long-term position, that's really hard, and that's really difficult. Where, some entrepreneurs, they're not owned by another company. So if they want to say, look, I want to take less profits in 2016 and 17 to invest and then reposition my company, they can probably do that a lot quicker than a company that's owned by Omnicom or somebody else. Because again, my feet are held pretty tight, and I need to deliver on the results for not only Omnicom, but our shareholders.
Yeah, well, I know it's a challenging position to be in. And, you think about growth in this industry. As a small company, I mean, it's arguable that it's easier to grow. A mid-sized company, it's easier to grow organically. You get to a certain size, then it becomes, how much market share can you really gain? And you've seen that in companies like Taluna and others, large panel providers. They get to a certain size. It's like, to be able to maintain that year in, year out, it's hard to scale. So you see a lot of consolidation, because some of those companies, well, how do they grow? They buy another company, either buy up a competitor or buy another complementary service and grow that way. Right. Is that a positive for our industry, all this consolidation, or is it a concern?
I think it's yes and yes, right? So I think that if you took a look, if my gut is that if you took a look at what's the best size sample provider, do I think it's $300 million? Probably not. Do I think it's $10 million? Definitely not. Do I think it's anywhere between 50 to 80, $90 million? Yeah, as a percentage of profit, not an absolute dollar amount, but as a percentage of profit, my gut is that a 50 to $80 million sample company is probably, as a percentage, more profitable than a $300 million one, because it's not always scalable. I mean, that's the problem. Yeah. It's a situation where quality will suffer. I would argue that, demand is outrunning supply right now in the sample industry, right? I mean, who's figured out, Paul, B2B sample? If I'm not mistaken, there's still a shortage of that out there, right? Nobody has figured that out. I mean, to me, I don't understand why LinkedIn hasn't come in and their entire business proposition is B2B, and maybe they don't want to mess around with something that's a small thing. But I think that they could own the B2B sample environment if they really wanted to in the market research industry. And nobody has really figured that out. And, the elephant in the room always for many, many years was, when you were buying sample from one provider, you thought you were buying from one provider, and you really weren't. You were buying a solution from a provider, and they were getting it done based on probably other relationships with regard to other sample providers, which at the end of the day is fine. But now they're all open about it, and that's great. I just think that consolidation can be good, and I think in some situations it is. So I don't think you could say it's absolute, it's great, or it's absolute, it's working against the industry at all. Some of them, I like some of the services that somebody like SSI has done. Schlesinger Associates, I think, has done some really nice things with regard to adding on to their services to expand their client base and to make sure that they're offering those additional services to clients. So that is scalable. But I think that, a market research industry, a supplier, I would argue that probably the most profitable of them is probably in that, I don't know, $30 or $40 million to maybe $70, $80 million, because there's a lot of controls that you can have. The staff is a little bit easier to manage than if it was $300-400 million. A lot of the big research companies, I don't know if they're growing to the extent as some of the other ones.
I think that's a really bright perspective. I think you're right on. So I think about, what's happening in our industry. Innovation is not a word I throw around in this industry a lot, although it's arguable that there's some innovation occurring. You got text analytics, obviously Odin Text, Tom Anderson's doing some really creative things over there. We're seeing some compelling things in the mobile space, although there's a lot of tire kickers, a lot of people that are kind of like testing the waters, but not really committed to it. Kind of like what we saw in the early days of online sample, right? You could get people interested, but they weren't spending enough money to make it really viable. So some innovation happening, but what do we need to do to spark more innovation? Or is innovation a word that we shouldn't even worry about and just focus on providing the best quality research? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think, you brought up about 7 questions in there. First of all, I think Tom Anderson is brilliant. He's doing some really cool things. I wish he had a lot of voice in the industry. And I think a lot of people, he could teach a lot of people to do what he does. Because I think he's doing some really cool stuff. The word innovation is here to stay. It's not going away. It's now built in terms of a lot of titles at research, or at not only research organizations, at client companies. I think that we need it, but I think that not everybody can jump to the conclusion that everything is innovated. I think that everybody says, oh, wow, this research project is innovated. And it's really not. It's just a little tweak. So I think we need to define the word a little bit more and not toss it around as often as we might have when we were in college, using some of the words back then. I think too many people are using the word too freely. I think there is some really cool stuff happening within organizations. I think a lot of that is happening in smaller organizations, or the larger organizations like General Mills and Coca-Cola and Unilever and Walmart and PepsiCo and Frito. And what's the reason? Well, they have an innovation budget, and which each of those companies that I mentioned, I don't know for a fact, so I'm just estimating. Don't quote me. But I'll bet you that all of their budgets are, over, $100 million. Oh, and the one I missed was P&G. So they probably all have a $10-20 million innovation budget, which is basically allowing their researchers to go and play and come up with some products and come up with some really cool things. And I think we need some more of that, and we need to showcase that a little bit more than we are. And that stuff is innovative. But the average company, Paul, I think if they have a $3 or $4 million market research budget, they're not able to do innovative things because, frankly, they need to take care of the business immediate and develop some strategies and marketing ideas to move the business forward. So they don't have a budget for that. So I think that word right now is a little bit overplayed.
I would agree. So let's shift gears real quickly here and talk briefly about an area of the business that we don't always instantly, at least from my perspective, we don't always instantly migrate to, but they have so much power and pull today, and the industry organizations are catering to them like crazy. But I question how much that should be happening. And that's the corporate researchers, the corporate clients out there. And I say that because the industry organizations have kind of lost their focus, in my opinion, going after that audience, because they're not supporting the industry organizations the way the research companies are. And I might be offending some people with that, but I apologize. It's just a perspective I have. But I know you share some similar thoughts on the role the corporate researchers should be playing and how they should be getting involved.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think the corporate researcher role should be expanded. And I think they should be the voice of the industry. I mean, again, if you were fortunate enough to make me Grand Poobah of research, I would get the P&Gs, the Unilevers, the Coke, the Walmarts, the General Mills, all in a room together, which probably collectively is probably, I don't know, 25%, 30% of all the research in the world is done, and have them come up with a set of standards that we can all adhere to. I'd love to see those corporate researchers on boards with younger researchers as well, and get rid of the same old, get rid of the gray hair that I have. And I think they could be much louder voice. I mean, we are catering towards a lot more of the clients than we ever have. I'm kind of okay with that, though. I mean, look, Quirks in February, why was it very successful? Because there was a lot of corporate researchers there. Why was CRC for MRA really successful? Because the CRC is Corporate Researchers Conference. That's what the entire conference is. So, if you have them there, a lot of people follow. And I like that strategy. I believe in that strategy, and I do believe that strategy is really working wholeheartedly. I'd like to see a little bit bigger voice. I think people like Joan Lewis is phenomenal. She's a special person. Stan from Unilever, who used to be at Coke. I mean, these guys are really smart. They're influential. They have big budgets. People listen to them, and they can move things forward. And I wish that they would all get together a little bit and be the voice of the industry, because I really think we need to move this thing forward pretty quickly. The market research industry, it moves too slow. If you put the market researchers at the starting line against a turtle and you said go, and our speed was based on adoption and our speed was based on change, the turtle would beat us every time. And that's really sad. We can't move at that slow a speed anymore, because there's going to be too many competitors that we don't even see right now. They're going to come in and take away a lot of the business that's here. And we've just got to make a lot of changes quickly.
Okay, well, we're about out of time here, but I do want to touch on one thing, and somebody brought it up in the comments. They said they think, I think marketing and market research being closer together is a good thing to attract millennial market researchers. I'm sorry, market research is no longer a behind-the-scenes profession. Everybody wants to build strategy, not just analyze data. That brings up an interesting point, because you mentioned our industry moving slow. If marketing agencies and people that are in the marketing space get more skilled at leveraging research, which with DIY products and a lot of solutions they have could happen, does that start to cannibalize our industry? Does it help our industry become stronger? What's your thoughts?
I think our industry is already cannibalized. The sample industry is commoditized. Right now, do-it-yourself is commoditized. I think that probably, in my opinion, I haven't seen any figures, but my estimation would be, I bet you there's about $1 billion being done by do-it-yourself researchers. Why? Whether it's a cost thing, or whether it's a speed, or whether it's the fact that they believe they can do it better or get the same answers, I'm not exactly sure. But I think we're already there with that. I do believe, I think you said, not only the whoever asked that question, but yourself, you agreed, Paul, which is, having marketing and marketing research together, I think is a good thing. Getting us a little closer again to the boardroom and getting us a seat at the table, that's an old expression, I think is a good thing. For us to be close to marketing, to be close to PR, I think I think the market research industry, unfortunately, it's like Rodney Dangerfield. It doesn't get respect. When I think we need to pat ourselves on the back. I mean, when was the last time you read? I mean, here's a newspaper, USA Today. Okay, wouldn't it be great to open up to page 5 and say, hey, market research helped blah, 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 introduce a new product. Wouldn't that be great to read? When was the last time you read that? When was the last, and you're probably like, Merrill, what are you doing reading the USA Today? Read it online. I get that, Paul, and you're not wrong, and I love you for it. But the reality is, when was the last time you read an online article that said, market research helped move us forward, moved our business forward? And the reality is we don't. We don't pat ourselves on the back. We don't get, as part of our process with, winning some business with clients, we should say to them, hey, when the time is appropriate, can I put out a PR release? Can you put out a PR release saying that this was a successful launch based on the research that we did? And we don't do that. And I think that's problematic as well.
All right, well, let's close this by giving you the opportunity to share your perspective on what you see happening to this industry if we don't make some changes. You and I kind of talked about, is this industry in jeopardy of losing a lot of what it has if we don't make some changes? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to flounder and not grow in terms of the total revenue of the industry. I think it's growing at 1 or 2% or something like that. And I think we may see that number continue to stall in those numbers or even peel something off. I mean, is the market research industry, Paul, going to go away in 2025 or 2045? I don't believe so. Will you and I be gone and in a nursing home playing mahjong together and you taking some of my money? Yes. But in the research industry will continue to go on. I think that the market research industry, if we don't work at a bigger speed, if we don't get some consolidation with dissociation, if we don't get some industry standards, we all know that survey length is too long. We all know that surveys are too boring. We all know that long grid questions don't work, right? Did I say anything that anybody on this call didn't know? No, but what are we going to do about it? And when are we going to do something about it? And I would argue it's going to be too late. And maybe it is already too late. So I think that we've got to change at a quicker speed. We've got to make sure and be well positioned because we're going to get a lot of competitors that nobody can see right now, whether it's Google surveys, whether it's Facebook analytics or whomever, some of these other companies we just can't see right now, which is fine. And I think we got to be smart and we got to be swift and we've got to make things happen. And this industry in total doesn't mean that some companies aren't doing that, but in total, I don't think we do that. And that's problematic from where I sit, especially in an industry where you and I basically, Paul, have been in this industry for our entire careers. And we love this industry and we love the people in this industry. And think about how many people, if you had a blank piece of paper, and if I said, hey, Paul, how many companies do you know of that aren't even in business anymore in the last 2 years that have gone out? That's not a small list.
No.
And that pains me. Every time I hear of one of them, it really hurts, because I don't want companies to go out of business that were mainstays in this research community.
Yeah, I would agree. This industry, I owe it a lot. I know you owe it a lot. We don't want to see this industry die, morph in a negative way. We want to see it grow. There's been some amazing comments coming in. Paul said it's making the industry easier to understand. Many major companies are scared of research and the unknown. We need to overhaul to show them that it's a forefront runner and a leader and more moving towards the KISS rule rather than complex. I think that's so true. I mean, the old days of the most complex analytics wins the game. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we need to present results that people can actually use and move up the food chain with an organization and get buy-in and earn that trust back at the top level. And you and I both had a big part of our career associated with online research, and I know you still do a lot of work in that space, but online research, in a lot of ways, the way sampling has been done, it's kind of done a disservice to research because there's a lot of people at C-level, executive level that don't understand research, that read the results about how, sampling is done. I'm concerned about that. So let's take just a few questions. I know your time is precious here. We did have a couple questions come in. One of the people asked, what do you see as the future of syndicated research?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to be here. I don't think it's going away. I think more and more companies, as they, I don't want to say struggle, as they have a challenge meeting, hitting numbers and growing their enterprise through custom market research, I think that's an area they go within. whoever threw that question out to you, I think is very astute. I think that's an area that a lot of mid-size market research suppliers are going to go after, and they're going to look at their clientele, and they're going to say, okay, we've got 6 or 8 clients within the CPG space or the quick serve restaurant space or telecommunications, whatever it is, and I think they're going to go after that, and I think there's going to be some success. I really do. I expect that to grow a little bit in the future.
Well, and I will tell you that's if you get good at selling syndicated research, I mean, you're going to expand your sales capabilities because that's a tough space to be successful. But if you can be successful, what an impact you can make.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. That's a good point.
So one of the other questions that came in is, how do you think the need for custom research will change in the future given the rise of big data? So here's another comment as a proponent of big data.
I think they're going to be married. I think they're going to be married together, and I think they're going to be combined. So I think down the road, most research projects will have a big data component. So whether that's a client giving them, data and having to marry the data and comment on both. But I fully believe, and we're doing some of that right now, that they're going to be incorporated in a research project for sure. I think they're going to be together.
Years ago, you predicted, long before I heard anybody else saying, that there was going to be more of a focus on mixed mode research, mixed sampling types of studies. And I see that happening a lot, especially in the qualitative space. There seems to be a lot of the qualitative researchers really playing a big part in kind of pushing that. Do you see that as still a trend that's going to be more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think mixed methodologies is going to be huge. I mean, it's easy to get one prediction right when you make about 1,000. So, but I think that's going to continue for sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so phone is already in trouble. What about the latest on TCPA? Do you have any insights there?
No, not really.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for Gallup. I was there for 10 years, and Gallup just wrote a big check. And obviously, their perspective is that they didn't wrongfully dial any cell phones, but that's unfortunately right now the burden of proof is a real challenge. So
it is.
There's a lot of lobbying happening, and I think a lot of pressure from the industry organizations to kind of put a damper on that. But in my opinion, I think they dropped the ball and waited way too long to get involved in that discussion.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, so how do you compete with retailers that are seeing their data more and more? So obviously, a lot of the software packages out there, people can get access to data like they never used to be able to. What do you think in terms of that change in technology?
I think that change of technology is going to put it, is going to take another shot into the market research industry. And I think that it speaks to a little bit about the fact that we don't pat ourselves on the back, that we don't ever read about how great market research is and the effect and the impact that it's had on new products or new services or even products and services that didn't come out, that it saved me, millions, billions of dollars. And I think we need to do that. I think it's all in the, again, it's an overplayed term with storytelling, but I think it's in the insights. I think it's how we deliver it. I think we've got to make sure that what we deliver, that report, that deliverable, that presentation has to have tremendous impact. It has to be able to move their business forward. It has to have some type of marketing impact, and it has to drive that insight to make sure that market research is something that they have to have on every product or service. Because if not, then they will make decisions based on just big data and segmentation or anything else. So I think that, Paul, goes on the shoulders of all the suppliers and all of the account managers and all of the advanced analytics teams who present to all of these client corporate researchers.
Let's close with a question from a audience that is near and dear to our heart, because we're both believers that we need more of these people in the industry. But as a millennial currently working for a market research company, what should I be doing to prepare for changes that will be happening in the industry?
That's a great question. And I applaud them for being on this call. Frankly, I think they should get a Boss Academy gift sent to them. But, I think as a millennial, if they want to move their career forward, I think it's what they could be doing is sharpening the skills, whether that's understanding social marketing a little bit better, understanding marketing a little bit more, the interaction between that and market research. You know, make sure that you are a good storyteller. Make sure that you can communicate effectively what the insights are, you know, what the recommendations are. And I would tell anybody who's young, who's a few years into the organization, you know, it's one thing to be, you know, when we talk about, you know, being a great presenter or a great communicator, that's really what it is. It means you're a great communicator. And that doesn't mean you have to be on a stage. That doesn't mean you have to present to 100 people. But that means that you can communicate effectively your insights, your recommendations, and how you want to move something forward with as few as 3 or 4 people in a meeting. And a lot of people can't do that right now. So that's the advice that I would tell whoever asked that question.
I think that's great advice. Okay, I want to preface, or excuse me, correct one of the questions that I had asked. I apparently didn't understand the direction they were going in relation to retail. The question was related more to, like, you know, the large grocery companies and large companies of the world that are selling their data and not wanting to see any data that doesn't talk to their shoppers. There's obviously this huge overload of data, and then we've got obviously the discussion of big data. So what does this all mean?
You know, you cut out there for a second, so I don't know if I heard the question right, but you're right. I mean, look, when I'm I'm a little bit different. So when I sit there and think about the future of the world and marketing to me as not as a researcher, but as a customer, I don't understand. You know, years ago I had said to some staff here, I said, you know, when it's 11 o'clock or 11:15 in Dallas, because we eat lunch here early in Dallas, unlike in the East Coast when it's 1 or 2 o'clock, I don't understand why I'm not getting texts that say, hey, Merrill, we've got your favorite dish over here at the Italian restaurant, or we've got your Thai food ready, or here's a free appetizer, come on by. So they're marketing to me. And I once said that, you know, when I'm in either Tom Thumb or a grocery store called Market Street or Albertsons or any of these other grocery stores, they actually have technology right now. When I walk into the store, they could obviously ping my phone, tell me what the sale items are, but they also could, you know, entice me. So when I'm in aisle 3, the water's $4. When I'm in aisle 7, the water's $3. When I'm in aisle 9, the water could be $1.50. I mean, they could do some of these things, and I think grocery stores haven't done that to my knowledge yet. And I'd love to combine that with grocery carts, that when I put the item in there, that I don't have to wait and almost check out that it's in there. I bag it and I just go. I think there's tremendous success that retailers are going to have, especially in the shopping arena, that is untouched potential right now. I don't know if anybody has mastered that right now. If they have, I'm not aware of it. But I think there's a lot of cool stuff that they could do, that they could marry, that they could do with research.
Well,
and look, you know what, Paul? I buy a new. You know, last time you buy a new car, if it was up to me and I was the king of the car industry and the grand poobah of the car industry, when you start your car on December 1st, it doesn't move until you do a survey. It does not move until you do a 7 or 9 question survey. When I turn on my TV or my computer for the first time in December, you know what? I can't turn it on until they say, what ads do you want this month? And have half of the ads be very specific to me. Now, I know they're doing a lot of that through cookies, but I'm saying do it a little bit more specific to me. And that would be really cool. And I don't think we've mastered that yet.
No, I agree. That's such a great opportunity. And it, you know, presents obviously the opportunity for research to be taken out of a lot of the things the retail space is doing. But I think also there's a great opportunity for us to get more involved, assuming that we position it properly. Merrill, I appreciate you coming on. I mean, obviously, you know, I have a lot of respect for you. I owe a lot of my success to you. So thank you for all you've done. And I know you care about this industry. So we really just appreciate you taking time out to be on.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. And I think Boss Academy in December, if you haven't picked your guest yet, I'm thinking a panel of millennials or something.
Well, that's down the road. You know who our next guest is. Ironically enough, you mentioned him earlier, Tom Anderson, December 17th. We're going to be talking to him.
Oh, is it? Oh, Tom's great. Whoever's still listening on this call, if you sat through 55 minutes of painful discussion of me, you're not going to want to miss Tom Anderson. He's phenomenal.
Well, I told you 30 minutes today, and we blew that out of the water. So I think it's been well worth it. guys, once again, my name is Paul Kirch, host and founder of Boss Academy Radio. Check us out at bossacademy.com. If you're an iTunes user, you can go to bossacademy.com/iTunes. We'll have this interview out on iTunes, and it'll be available out on our YouTube page. So let us know if this was helpful to you. If you can, I'm going to leave this open for a couple minutes. You can ask some more questions, and I'll get those to Merrill. We can get some questions answered offline. But once again, thank you for tuning in. Come back December 17th when we have Tom Anderson on to talk about text analytics, but also talk about how he's gone from a custom research firm transitioning to software and what it's taken from a business perspective to do that. I think it's going to be a really compelling conversation. BOSS stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies. That's what this show is all about. So hopefully you gained some great insights today. Have an amazing day. And Merrill, thanks again for being on.
Thanks, Paul. I'll talk to you soon.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care.